So today we're going to be talking about scanning lines of Shakespearean verse. That sounds really scary, but it's really simple. A few things that you'll need to know. Number one, what is Shakespearean verse? There's two ways to write, or specifically that Shakespeare wrote in. His first style is going to be verse, which is like poetry. And then there is prose. Prose is much different from verse. It's like standard English. Before we break those down though, we kind of want to know, well, why would we scan verse? Verse gets scanned for several reasons. One, the way it's written, which is going to be, it's very rhythmic. So there's definitely like a cadence to it. And it's also written in a line format. So it's not how we write paragraphs. Whereas prose sounds like standard English, right? So it's not, doesn't really have a cadence to it. It's kind of just how we speak as individuals, and it is written in paragraph form. So it is really easy to read. So you scan verse for a few reasons. Number one is to break it down into bite-sized pieces. It can help inform a performer on kind of what is important in the line once you scan it. Looking at verse is really difficult. As you can see over here, looking at verse, it can be really complicated and you're like, what? There's so much happening. There's so many descriptors. Lines are broken up in the middle of sentences. Prose can be a lot easier to understand because it's more naturally how we read. So that's a lot easier for people. Scansion is breaking down lines of verse and literally just making them easier to understand to the average person. You would never scan a line of prose because it's just normal English. There's nothing for you to break down. Scanning is the act of literally breaking a piece of verse down so we can have better understanding of what is going on, what is important. It can even give you insight into the character's emotional state. We won't be doing any of that today. We are just going to be going over the basics on how to scan a standard line of Iambic pentameter. So Iambic pentameter is really easy to understand if you just break down what the words mean. A lot of people get really scared by, oh my gosh, I don't know what that word means. This could mean so many things, like what is it? It's actually really quite simple once you remember the basics of it. So iambic, an iamb, an iamb. So if I were to break this down right there, an iamb is literally just two syllables. So two syllables broken down into stressed and unstressed syllables. So stressed is just what you put the emphasis on versus unstressed is something that goes away. So if I were to take alike, these two things are alike. So it's one word, like, but we'll break it down into two syllables. Now, do we say a like? Naturally, we normally say so it's going to have an unstressed syllable. The unstressed syllable is a little u like that. And then like, I is the stressed syllable, right? It's the one that we put the emphasis on. So it's going to have the stress symbol, which is just a little hash mark at the top. So alike would be scanned as unstressed, stressed. That's a standard foot of iamb. Iambs again are just two syllables that follow the unstressed, stressed format. So now that we know what an iamb is, which is just two syllables following a unstressed, stressed pattern, what is a pentameter? Pentameter can also be broken down into two definitions. Penta meaning 5 and meter meaning feet. So it is 5 feet. So a line of iambic pentameter, so if iamb means two syllables, then we have a line that has 5 feet of two syllables, meaning we'll have 10 syllables in the entire line of verse. So if I took a line like 2 households, both alike in dignity. All right, so let's figure out, is it a pentameter, right? Is it 5 feet of two syllables? Is it iambic? But let's break it down on is it a pentameter? So how many syllables do we have? And literally you can count it out on your hands. So 2 households, both alike in dignity. So 10, perfect. Now you want to break them up into iambic. So the first thing you would do is just separate them literally by syllables. So we have 2 house, right? That's one break. Holds both, alike, we've already broken down, so we know that that's 2 syllables. In dig, right? Niti, perfect. So then we can number them. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 feet. So it's pentameter. Now let's see if it's iambic. Again, the rules for it being iambic is it follows an unstressed, stressed pattern always. That is if it is iambic. If it is anything other than that, it is not iambic, which is fine. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean it's badly written. Again, it just signifies something else is going on. A lot of the time it's an emotional state of the character speaking. But for now, we're just worried if it's unstressed, stressed naturally. So 2 households, right? Perfect. Both. And we know alike is already unstressed, stressed because we don't go a-like. We go alike, right? Indignity. So let's break it down. So in, you always kind of want your non-operative words to be unstressed. I don't want to stress in. That's not important. No one cares. Dignity. So if you pronounce that, dignity. Dig is pretty heavily hit, right? So that's stressed. N is not important. T is our last one, so it'll be stressed. So 2 households, both alike in dignity. Voila, that's a line of Shakespearean iambic pentameter. That's a line of verse, broken down, already set. So the first thing we did again is going to be that we write it out. We break it up into the feet, so there should be 5 feet. Each foot has 2 syllables. So 2 house holds both alike in dignity. Perfect. And then you break it up into unstressed, stressed. So you have 2 house holds both alike in dignity. And you literally, the best way to do it is use your hands like a 5-year-old and just sing-song it. 2 house holds both alike in dignity. 10. Perfect. You've scanned your first line of Shakespearean verse. Now that you've scanned one normal line of Shakespearean verse in iambic pentameter, let's do a practice one together and maybe look at something new and a little bit different on scanning. It'll be really famous, you'll know it, and I'll give you a minute to write it down as well. Okay, so now that we've scanned a normal line of iambic pentameter and we're all feeling really good, really comfortable about it, we're going to scan another line of iambic pentameter. Something that you obviously know is very famous, very normal. Let's scan it, see what happens. So step number 1 that we're going to do is break it up into our meters, our feet, which is 2 syllables is in 1 foot. Let's see, but soft, what light, through yawn, right, in the middle, der win, do breaks. That's our last little, go over that exclamation point. But soft with light through yonder window breaks. Great, nice and scanned. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. So here's where we've run into something a little funny. Let's count it out and we'll kind of come back to this guy that's over here that we're kind of unsure about. But soft, what light, through yawn, der win, do breaks. So let's count our second line. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. All right, so we're gonna keep our question mark there, but let's just scan first and foremost. So how do we scan? We're always gonna look at unstressed, stressed. And we'll say, because our pattern is unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, so this would, in theory, be unstressed. And again, we'll come back to it. But let's look at the top. But soft, what light, through yonder window breaks. That sounds pretty good. That doesn't sound like there's anything weird going on there. Soft should be hit, that's pretty important. There's also the exclamation, so you do want to hit that anyway. So that kind of helps us emphasize, yeah, that should be a stressed syllable. Light is also important. So you kind of pick up this pattern that your important things are your stressed syllables. So soft, light, window breaks is what I would say are like important. Our stressed syllables all seem to be in the right spot. So that first line, typical iambic pentameter, 10 out of 10 would recommend. That is a Shakespeare joke. 10, because pentameter. So let's look at our next one, which is kind of giving us a little bit of a funky thing going on. So it is the east and Juliet is the sun. So let's think about this for a moment. East is important, great. It is the east, cool. Juliet. So if we were to say Juliet, Juliet, right? That's unstressed, stressed, perfect. Is the sun. Let's go back to our original problem, is that we have 6. We don't actually have 5 feet in here. We have 6 or 5.5 technically, because you have 1 extra syllable. That's okay, that's normal. What that is called, if it is in the unstressed, is a feminine ending. So I'll write that out here. That is when you have 11 syllables and your last syllable is unstressed. So if we were to say this is a straight line of iambic pentameter, but it has 11 syllables, so I'll write like a little F, 11 for feminine ending. Now let's think about how we scanned it though, and why we have unstressed, stressed. Now what did we say about those stressed syllables? They're important. We don't have unstressed syllables on important things, and we don't stress unimportant things. So if we were to look at this second line, it is the east and Juliet is the sun. Well, what are we saying? If we were to take out everything that's unimportant in there, we'd say east, Juliet is the. But what is she? Like, we don't know. Here we've got soft, light, window breaks. Okay, there's some light coming through a window. You totally know what that means. In this situation though, if we don't stress sun, if it is not one of our important words, you lose what's happening. What is Juliet? She is the source of the light, which is the sun, which means this actually would be a stressed syllable. So we would mark it like a stressed syllable because it's important. And again, we stress the important things. So that changes things a little bit. It is still irregular. It still has an ending. We'd still mark it with a little 11, but since it is stressed, it is actually a masculine ending. But then you would just mark it M, 11. So that would signify, okay, I know that this is 11 syllables and I know that it's stressed. So going back to why we scan and what that means, this signifies, and what you'll notice that this signifies in Shakespearean verse is that if there is a feminine or masculine ending, something is going on with the person emotionally. It can give really clear insight to where they're at. If you're like, what does this mean? How do I perform this? How do I read this? This is a really easy way to do that, is scan it, look at it, and all of this will tell you what's important and what emotional state you're in. So if I was Romeo and I was out here, I'd be like, he freaks out. He's kind of got it together, this top line, okay, I can deal with that. He's keeping his cool, but he sees her, he's lost it. So much so that it's not even a feminine ending where he's like, I'm kind of thrown off by it. He completely loses control and is like, I'm gonna declare my entire love for you right now at your window. And that's why it's a masculine ending. So that's been it. You've scanned your first lines of Shakespearean verse in iambic pentameter. You've learned what a feminine and a masculine ending are, which is really cool. That's a little bit more into the advanced realm. It's a little bit past that basics that I said we were going to do today. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you've learned what benefit this can have, whether you're an English major, a performance major, or you're just a normal student that isn't in the performance realm at all. I hope you enjoyed and learned something, and I hope I've ignited some spark in you for some Shakespeare in your life. Have a great day.